On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Success Series with Ravi, where we interview inspirational people from all around the world and learn from them success secrets. Now, if you sense a certain excitement in my voice, unusually high, there is a good reason for it. A few days ago, I did a video where I mentioned the path towards building your superpower, and it has 3 stages. One, the first stage is do what others don't. The second stage is do what others won't. And the third stage is do what others can't. And our guest today is Scott Ginsberg, who does what others can't. He's somebody that I have derived immense inspiration for more than a decade now. He has written over 50 books. He has 7 musical albums. He has written over 3,000 articles, 600 speeches, 88 training videos. He has built 5 software applications, 2 concert documentaries, and he's renowned as a globally recognized brand on approachability. And that's why we thought it would be best if we could have him to talk about how to be prolific, ultra prolific, if I may ask. Prolific is still a little short in what he has achieved. And not just that, he was inducted into Ripley's, believe it or not, as the world record holder of wearing name tags. I have read so much of his content over the years, and also one of his published book, Make a Name for Yourself. He's written 50 books, but I could only read one. But that one book is hugely inspirational. I cannot emphasize it enough that you all should pick that book. And of course, the others I will gradually. So Ferdinand Foch once said that the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. And Scott is one such human being with a soul on fire. So let's welcome him. Scott, welcome to Success Series with Ravi. How are you doing today?
Wonderful, thank you. I guess that's why I'm getting so hot. It must be the fire, but that's okay.
So Scott, as I said, I'm a big fan of yours. Okay, that I don't know. It's genuinely from the bottom of my heart. I'm so excited to have you. I just took a random chance. I sent you a note on Facebook, and you being the master of approachability, you honored my respect. But before we get into meatier things, you have a very interesting career trajectory. So just give us a brief career trajectory and how did it all start? What all have you been doing over the years, and where are you headed?
Sure. Well, I've always considered myself to be a writer. That's the main undertone of everything that I do. And, I started writing music when I was in high school and started recording records when I was in college. And about halfway through college is when I decided to start wearing a name tag every day. And it was really just a sort of a fun little experiment to do that a friend of mine thought of one night, and everybody was so friendly when I started doing it, and it was such an interesting way to relate to people that I decided to keep doing it indefinitely. Now, I had no idea that the name tag thing would sort of propel my career into all these interesting directions, but it went viral on campus because this is pre-social media, pre-Google, just people on campus knew me as the name tag guy. And then shortly thereafter went viral online, again, pre-social media. So this is like the word viral meant a different thing back then. But either way, it got lots of great media attention. A website shut down, which is kind of exciting back in the day, but really launched my career. And so being a writer, which initially started with music and then expanded into books, speeches, consulting, music, et cetera, that's been my thing, for over 20 years now. And it's been strange, it's been challenging, and I've learned a lot in this time. So yeah, that's where I am today. I still write all the time, and I do lots of different things.
And now you have shifted gears into doing something else, isn't it? So do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So, because I've been doing this for so long now, and because I've, as you mentioned in your intro, found a way to do it in a different way that is unique to my system. I started documenting the way that I create and looking at the different tools and mindsets and approaches and systems that I use that have been really helpful just to overcome my own creative blocks. And people have been telling me that they've been really helpful, and they've told me that what they've learned from these different tools that I've shared has been useful for them. So what I decided to do is sort of reverse engineer all these different projects that I've been working on. There have been commonalities in the way they've been executed. So I extracted all those tools and eventually put together what has been my most recent product launch, which is called Prolific. And Prolific is the world's first personal creativity management system. Now, no one really knows what that means yet because it's brand new. Personal creativity management, I just sort of invented that out of thin air like everything else in my career. But what I've discovered is that PCM, this whole discipline that I've used, is incredibly helpful. And the reason is because people who have to be creative for a living, like that's a really hard job. I mean, Ravi, you certainly know, having to do that day in and day out, it's hard. And there's so many tools out there that are supposed to help creative people, but frankly, like a lot of them are just expensive or clunky or ineffective, or I think there's a lot of tools that like waste more time than they actually save. I mean, I've worked for a number of startups and agencies over the years, and it's like, how many project management software can we possibly use? I find that these tools aren't effective. So what I wanted to do is put together personal creativity management to give people the tools that I know work, that help them stay focused and to execute their ideas. So that way they're actually accomplishing the creative dreams that they have. And that's what Prolific is.
Excellent. We'll come to Prolific in detail while we are talking.
Great.
So you have sort of this wild non-conformist career path, which is very different from a regular. Even for writers, I don't think writers write as prolifically as you. Or the kind of lifestyle that you have, that's very non-conformist. Now, when you pick up what triggered you at the very beginning? How did you start this? Why did you not have a regular job like a lawyer, a doctor? What triggered you to start this career path?
Well, I should say that being a lawyer wouldn't have worked out because the only class in college that I failed was business law. Like I got a hardcore, like a full F, and I studied, I went to class, I tried everything. And I remember when I got my final exam back when I was a senior in college, I went to the office hours of my professor and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I really try. And he's like, I know you take notes. I know you study. I know you're there every day. And like, Scott, you just don't get it. It was like Austin Powers when he goes, Scott, you just don't get it, do you? And I was like, I don't know what to do. How can I get a passing grade? He's like, well, you came to class every day and I always remembered your name, so I'll give you a D. so that was a nice moment, although just a very clear indication I should never be a lawyer of any kind. So for me, like the sort of non-conformist career path, that's just indicative of my personality. That's who I am. I've always been that sort of rebellious, Enneagram 4, if anyone out there is big into the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs. I'm an ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs. So like, if you look at my different archetypes and sort of my personality, it is rebellious, it's nonconformist. I have to be an individual. I have to be different from everybody. And that's the way my brain works. So, back in 2001, when I was a senior in college, everybody was like going out to Silicon Valley because that was the tech boom, or it was probably the end of the tech bubble, I guess, at that time. And, people were working for tech companies and people were getting degrees for consulting and finance and all this stuff. And I'm like, I just want to write. I just want to make stuff. It's something I'm really good at, and I know I can be valuable. And I didn't know where that was going to be valuable. So, I had various jobs, like at a bartender and selling furniture and working at a hotel, doing other things to support my career. But like, working in that environment, it's sort of like a big corporation at that time, it really wasn't for me. So that's when I launched my career, and I was really fortunate to have some nice timing with, some press that helped build it. And it has been sort of nonconformist ever since.
Yeah, so you are unfairly crediting the press, but it's actually your value that made you successful. Immense value, I must say.
For sure. Thank you.
Boggled my mind on the kind of
Thank you.
The prolific writing that you could do, and also keeping that value top shot. So when you pick up, and this is for many youngsters who might be watching this, when you pick up a non-conformist life that is true to you, and which is very different from the masses or the mainstream, how do you overcome the pressures of being different from your regular friends and acquaintances? Because mostly youngsters, they do not pick something that is true to themselves because of the peer pressure. They want to be
Right.
just part of the herd. How did you fight that? Was that a struggle at all, or you were wired like this from before?
It was a struggle. It is a struggle. And I think it'll always be a struggle. This is like the tax we pay on uniqueness. It sucks. It is steep. And I mean, I remember from a very early age, I mean, so let's go back to like age 12 or something like that. Like when I started playing music when I was a kid, this was the early 90s. Everybody wanted to play Nirvana and Pearl Jam, which is great. Like I love Nirvana and Pearl Jam, but like I was more on this sort of acoustic, folky, more sort of classic rock kind of thing. So like immediately I was playing music that was different from my friends, and that was hard. I felt alienated and invisible in like my tastes. You know, my dad taught me how to play music. He's a folkie from the 60s. So I was more into that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's hard. I wish I had like really good answers for like how to overcome it, other than like, you have to trust yourself and you have to just accept the fact that like, not everyone is going to get you and not everyone will understand it. Some people will get really angry and like have vitriolic responses to your choices and preferences. And it's hard. And you kind of have to just suck it up and keep pushing through and just keep proving to yourself, you know what, I made the right choice. And, you know, when I graduated college, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Oregon was where no one in the Midwest was going at that time. And that was hard. I mean, it was hard for my family to understand. It was hard for my friends to understand. And I just had to say, you know what, I trust my gut that there's something out there waiting for me that I'm going to discover. And sure enough, there was. Made great friends, had a great experience. But, you know, whether it's the hobbies you have or the place that you live or the career that you go into, if you are someone who is going to do it unconventionally, and if you're going to believe in your intuition to do those things, just understand that there will be resistance interpersonally, maybe even energetically. And like, that's part of the deal. This is the tax we have to pay if we're going to be on our own. And I think what will happen over time is that you'll prove it to yourself that you don't need people's approval, and you'll prove it to yourself that you are able to find fulfillment doing what you want. And like, maybe people like come around, maybe they don't, but that's okay, because you're doing it for you and not for them.
Got it. And also Portland has a history of non-conformist. There is another person that I know, Chris Gillibue. I don't know if
he's great.
He's also from Portland, I suppose,
That's
isn't it? Tim Ferriss is also from Portland, isn't it?
He's from Portland, and then the World Domination Summit is in Portland. And Chris is wonderful. I've got to meet him a few times, and Portland was great. I mean, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest, which is amazing and still is amazing. And so moving to Portland was great because it was really the first time in my life where I lived somewhere where everybody was weird enough to make me feel normal.
Nice.
Right. I always felt like the weird guy in the Midwest. Then you go out to the West Coast or in New York as well, here on the East Coast. I'm like, oh, everyone's weird. This is great. So like, I definitely had a spiritual connection to Portland and similarly here in New York. And I think that's a big part of it. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to relocate to a city that will embrace the sort of wackiness that you have, I think that goes a long way.
Right. And if you go through that lonely phase of life where nobody gets you, what is the advice to tide over that? Is it that eventually you get to meet people of your ilks? Or so you just have to go through that phase and then eventually get to meet a lot of them? How does
I think so. I think you have to be proactive. And like despite wearing a name tag every day and being an extrovert, I've definitely self-alienated, and I regret doing that. It's easy to say, well, no one understands me, so screw those people, and I'm just going to stay here and be alone. Like there is a time for that, but I think a better choice is to say, okay, well, where are there other people like me who probably feel the same way? And I think that's one way to do it, is to try to connect around that sort of commonality of constitution. Right. Then I think that another really important thing to do is to channel that tension. I think that tension is really important when we have whatever types of feelings, whether it's loneliness, sadness, resentment about people not understanding our choices. Let's find a way to like channel that as energy and as a fuel source. And, one of the reasons I've been able to be so prolific is because like I'm really connected with my feelings, and I'm able to use those in the service of making art. I mean, shoot, if I wasn't writing music, I don't know where all this energy would go. God help us if that went like back internally.
So you also credited your personality. You said you are Enneagram and you are ENTJ. But did other than your inherent personality, did you have influences that made you what you are today when you were
Yeah.
growing?
Yeah, I was really fortunate to grow up in a family that was full of entrepreneurs, creative thinkers, artists, business people that, in many ways, were nonconformists in their own right, and different periods of history, certainly. Yeah, so I had that as sort of an ethos in our family, and I also had a lot of encouragement and affirmation, and that's got to be one of the biggest things. I think that there's a huge generation of people that probably came after me. I was born in 1980, so I'm Generation X, like spiritually. I don't know what the date on Generation X is. I don't think it matters, but like I'm a Gen Xer, like through and through. And I think that post Gen X, when you get to Gen Y, millennials, et cetera, I think that there's a lot of negativity around like too much affirmation and people that were praised too much, and their parents told them they were special too much. And I feel like I had just enough of the parents saying, you're wonderful, you're great, you're special, you can do this. And to me, that laid a foundation that still today is really important in allowing me to be successful.
Got it. And what was the source of the coal, the fire in your belly? Because the kind of writing that you did, the sheer amount of prolific writing that you did, it just does not come out of its own automatically. I'm sure
Right.
there is a purpose behind it. There is some deep
Right.
purpose or mission. So what is it that was driving you to be so prolific?
Well, I say a couple of things. Number one is definitely shame. Having like, I worked a part-time job. I lived in my parents' basement and I was 22, 23. And yeah, my parents have a really nice house, so it's not like I was suffering, but like, there is just the, like, I want to be able to show the world that I can be successful. And so part of that was like, well, I don't have any advanced degrees. I mean, like, I'm not like the most genius man there ever was, but like, I bet I could outwrite everybody. I bet I could write more than anybody. And not because I needed to win, but more of like, I know I have a lot of stuff in here and I think I have a really good system for getting it out. So like, I can trust that the volume of things that I'm able to create, that will create enough value and gravity towards what I'm doing that it'll pay off. And I think the other piece behind that, like sort of connected to that shame piece, is like, what is it that I can do to make a contribution? And I think it took me a while to figure that out. I mean, I started making art really young, but it wasn't until like, I don't know, maybe my later 20s, 30s, whenever, when I started to figure out, oh, I think I know what gifts I have and how they can be useful to other people and how they can make an impact. And I could only figure that out by writing a lot. It was only by writing a lot, failing a lot, just learning a lot, that I was able to sort of pinpoint, oh, great, I got it. That's the value. Now I know where I can use these tools.
And when you were able to produce so much of volume of content, it cannot happen without consuming content as well. So were you always an avid reader?
Yeah, I mean, here's the way I look at it. Reading is a spoke on a larger wheel. I think of it as like inhaling, which is like, it's kind of an appropriate metaphor for me because like I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't do anything, but I inhale everything. And so whether it's books or conversations or just sort of the scenery or podcast, whatever, I am constantly inhaling everything I possibly can through my eyes, ears, wherever that I possibly can, and really just trying to notice stuff and take lots of notes and just sort of keep a record of these things that I'm noticing. And that is the fuel that keeps the fire going.
So was that also natural to be aware and observant instead of sleepwalking through life, which is an epidemic for most people?
Yeah.
Chasing distractions.
Yeah, I think that's really hard. I think we're all guilty of it too. And I think technology has exacerbated our alienation. And I'll give you a good example. So my wife and I got a dog a couple months ago. And one of the great things that I enjoy about going out, like taking the dog for a walk or just taking the dog around the corner to poop, it's great because I don't have my phone. Or if I do have my phone, I can't look at it because if I'm looking at my phone, like the dog's gonna, jump in the street or like attack a squirrel or she's a great dog, but who knows what a dog is going to do? The point is, like, having the dog keeps me present. And so I think that's one of the challenges for all of us, is to find things that are going to like be a forcing function to notice and to be present and to just sort of be aware of our surroundings. I love my headphones. I love my podcasts and my music, especially on the subway, you know, in New York. I want to be in my cocoon. Like, we should have those boundaries as well. But it's, yeah, like you said, Ravi, it's really easy to sleepwalk. And so like the name tag kind of keeps that awake. I mean, people say hi to me all the time. And I'm like, oh shit. Yes. Hello. And it like snaps me out of my stupor.
Got it. So do you believe that the true contribution, or for your gifts to be shown to the world, it's very important to be observant and to be focused in life and not have distractions? Because I don't think distractions help you reveal your gifts, right?
I think so too. You mentioned the idea of focus, which I've talked about too. And I think of focus in a little bit of an unusual way. I know, shocking, I do something unusual, but here's the way I think about focus. So we've always been told that focus is like pick a lane, do this one thing. Right. And I don't think of it that way. To me, focus is a function of identity and not activity. Right. So what I mean is, like, I can do lots of different things. And if you see somebody doing a lot of different things, you probably think, oh, they're not focused. Oh, they're scattered. Oh, they're pulled in a million directions. I don't think so. Not if it's true to you and it comes from your core, your identity, then you actually are focused. I mean, I do lots of stuff. Like, I write music. I just built a software thing. I have a day job. I do all this other stuff. And it's like, they seem unrelated, but they're actually highly focused because they all come from here, and I'm being me everywhere, just in a lot of different ways.
That's such an important point. And I was about to ask that if when you are drawn into multiple things, and I'm also extremely curious, and one of the things I'm guilty about is because of my curiosity, I'm drawn into multiple interests.
Right.
And I have my mentor. I always ask him, should I focus on this thing or should I also be doing that? Because that also is I'm equally passionate about these things. And he says that as long as the interests are complementary and making a beautiful whole, you should go for it. But yeah, so maybe you could shed some light there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're shamed out of having multiple interests. And it's like, oh, well, if you do this, you're not allowed to do that. Like, bullshit. We can do all of it, and it's all connected. I mean, I'm a big hot yoga guy. That's a huge part of my life. And unfortunately, I have to do it here in the office. I can't go to a studio right now because it's closed. And I miss my friends at the hot yoga studio. But despite that, it's still a big part of my life. And I mean, I wrote a book about yoga. It has nothing to do with wearing a name tag. It has nothing to do. I'm sorry.
365 meditations.
Yes, I love that book. I'm so proud of that book. It's unlike anything I've ever done, but it's still who I am. Like, I couldn't be an entrepreneur, or I couldn't be spending all my day writing if I didn't have a yoga practice to like keep me sane while I'm doing all this stuff. So like, to me, it's all connected, even if it seems divergent.
Got it. Excellent. So as I said, you have this deep-seated purpose and mission. And also, I read in your book that you go through your mission statement. What is your mission statement, if I may ask? And has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, it really has. Mission statements, I think, are tricky because I spent a long time trying to find the right mission statement. And like, I don't know, it always felt forced, and I never quite got it right. A good friend of mine is a life coach, and he's not like my official life coach, but because we're so close, he ends up coaching me, which is really great. So I have my mission statement right here on a sticky note. I'll just read it to you.
Yeah, sure.
Here we go. Yeah. I am creating a fulfilling life that is engaging and inspiring to myself and others, integrates all of my gifts, and provides me a sense of stability and freedom.
Lovely. Could you repeat that a little slower, maybe?
No problem. It's yeah, I know. I have a lot of words. That's my thing. Here we go. I am creating a fulfilling life that is engaging and inspiring to myself and others, integrates all of my gifts, and provides me a sense of stability and freedom.
Awesome.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I was part of a mastermind group, and they had their own version of doing mission statements. They had to be like 4 words or less or something. And so they like didn't like mine. Like, no, we don't, that was too many words. We don't like that. I'm like, oh, screw you people. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Like if I really want to like take what I just said and boil it down, I mean, I can shorten it. I can say fulfillment through meaning creation.
Right.
There we go. 4 words. Are you happy? I got your 4 words. It's so dumb. So like your mission statement could be whatever you want it to be.
Got it. And how did you how did you just bring it down to this couple of sentences? What was the process for you?
I know. I forget, honestly. I think that the key was trying to figure out what the umbrella was. What's the big thing? And I think a lot of us think it's happiness. And I remember my mentor told me this a long time ago. My first, I have a lot of mentors, but my first mentor, still one of my mentors, was my high school English teacher. And he's wonderful. He is a retired professional baseball player and civil rights leader turned educator. And he's tremendous. So Bill used to tell me that happiness was incidental, but there's something else. There's something bigger that's intentional. And so for me, like happiness isn't my goal. Happiness isn't the target. Happiness is what I get for hitting the target. And for me, the target is fulfillment. That, like, to me, that is the big thing. And it was helpful because I figured, like, if I could just train my brain to think about, will this move me closer to my fulfillment? Right. If it doesn't, then ideally I won't do it, but don't always have a choice. But so yeah, that fulfillment became the umbrella. And then the idea of meaning creation is big for me because we're always told that, like Viktor Frankl, you know, his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which is a great book. The thing is, like, meaning isn't something we search for. It's something we create. And that's a big thing for me. So instead of trying to find meaning, I create it. And that's where the fulfillment comes from.
Excellent. Nice. So you are prolific. We know that. But what are the secrets to become prolific? If somebody is like, I'm prolific at any extent of imagination, I want to be prolific.
Yeah.
I have distractions which I think are the enemies of my creativity. What would be some of your tips to go on that path?
Great. Well, I think the first thing is to think about the creative process as 3 things. Whatever it is that people are creating, whether it's a curriculum for a kindergarten class or interview like yourself or music or whatever, there's only 3 parts. Okay, there is inspiration. There's part 1. Okay, there's organization, which is part 2, and then there's execution, which is part 3. Now you can use whatever words you want for that. Like if you want to use a yoga example, you can say inhale, pause, exhale. Same thing. If you want to use an industrial metaphor, you can think raw materials, factory, truck or shipping. But that's the first thing you have to do, because once you realize that there's only 3 possible stages you could be in, then you've got the ticket to solving your problem. So I'll give you an example. So let's say that you're somebody who has too many ideas. Right. I've been in that place before. I'm sure you've been in that place yourself, Ravi, like a lot of people have. So let's say you think, I have too many ideas. That's a huge problem, and I think it's very common. So if you have too many ideas, let's see if you can figure it out. Which of the 3 categories or the phases would the too many ideas fall in, do you think?
Categories of mine?
Well, I'm just saying, so in the process of creativity, inspiration, organization, and execution, yes, which of those 3 categories is connected to having too many ideas? What's your thought on that?
Inspiration, I think, because
right.
I mean, right, because since I'm curious about lots of things, I get inspired by a lot of things. That's why I get a lot of input.
That's right. Right. So people have all these ideas. They have plenty of inspiration coming through. And what I've seen with clients that I've worked with and coworkers is what they actually need is to have some organization around, well, you need to pick an idea.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're never going to do the other ones, but you got to pick. So there's one of the tools on Prolific, on personal creativity management, is called an execution ranking. And what this does, it's in the middle step, the organization piece, when it says, hey, you have lots of ideas. Great. Now what you're going to do is take a framework and you are going to make a decision of which one you're going to do. So this is something that at my office, we do this a lot. I work for a startup called Metric Collective. And one of the things that I do in my job is to tell people okay, we're going to rank this idea. Okay, the categories we're going to rank it on are energy, effort, and then market need. So if we say that, hey, we want to teach an online class for our customers. Okay, great. Great idea. So how much energy is this going to take? Like, well, I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to do this. So I'll stay up all night. Now, if one of my coworkers says that, I'm like, good. Okay, this is good. A lot of energy. Now, when we talk about like the next, which is resources and cost. So if we're gonna do a 10-week class, is that expensive? Like, what's that going to cost us? He's like, well, yeah, it's a lot of work. You know, we got to write the scripts. We got to do a lot of production. We got to, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, so high on the resource piece.
Right.
Now, the last evaluation in the execution framework is the market need. So what if he says, well, you know, our customers have been asking about this for years. They're going to love this. Every day I get an email from someone say, hey, when are you guys going to teach a class? Now, if that's the case, if you got a lot of energy, customers are asking for it, and you know it'll probably take a lot of resources, then that's a yes. That's like go, because your energy will compensate for the expense of it, and it'll pay off. There's an example of someone with too many ideas can use that tool, the execution ranking, to move forward.
Got it. Excellent. So what about laziness? Okay. So the enemy is also laziness. There are so many enemies to being prolific, right?
Right.
There is, of course, distraction. There is pure laziness. How do you get yourself off your sofa bed to march ahead? Because I know you wake up at 6. You start working at 6 a.m. So I'm sure you wake up much earlier than that.
Right. I'm an early riser. Yeah. Well, laziness is tricky because that's a word that our culture has sort of bastardized into a way of like shaming ourselves. That I think the word, I don't use the word lazy anymore. I probably used to, and I'm not a lazy person, but I think it's dangerous because if you've spent the last 2 days just, you know, doing nothing and, oh, I'm so lazy. It's like, well, not necessarily. Maybe your body just needed a rest. Maybe you shouldn't have been making any art this weekend because you needed to just like get some sleep. So it's like, stay away from the word lazy. Just say, you know what? I needed some self-care. I took care of myself and now I'm ready to go. That's my comment on that. Now, distraction is a whole other thing. Distraction is something that I get really angry when I think about distraction because I'm a pretty focused guy and like we all get distracted. I'm not completely immune to it, but like I've trained myself to just tune out a lot of the crap coming in. And I challenge people to figure out how they would do it. And, you know, one of the tools on Prolific is called energetic boundaries. And, you know, we think of boundaries in terms of like the way that we communicate, but like there's an energetic boundary that I think is really important for distractions. You know, there are people whose phones are beeping every 5 seconds with like some sort of notification. And I'm like, why are you doing that to yourself? Like there are people who get a physiological stress response in their stomach when they hear certain sounds on the phone, or like if it buzzes, like, oh, you know, it's CNN telling me the world's going to end. Like just cut that out of your phone. You don't need to know that. That's bad for your health. It's like, think of it as like the energetic version of eating sugar. It's just bad for you. So I think like that combination of the compassion around not saying laziness and then just like having stronger energetic boundaries around some of those distractions, that's some baseline stuff that you can do that will allow you to be more focused.
Got it. You mentioned about laziness on a positive connotation, right? Self-care and just taking a break and stuff like that. But there is the other side of laziness, which is like inertia. So you take you take a break and then you're not able to get back. So one of my ways is I surround myself with people who build more than what I do, so that keeps me on check. So also I talk to inspirational people who just build and
that's good.
Get more. So are you don't need these tools, or do you still make use of these tactics?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm really fortunate that I get to work with some incredibly creative and smart and interesting people at my day job, so to speak. So yeah, so I'm really lucky to be able to have other people to help snap me out of inertia. That happens to me. Like I said, none of us are immune to it. But I find that like a lot of times, if I'm uninspired or if I'm not motivated, it doesn't happen that often. But if I am, it's either like a lack of consumption or a lack of connection. So maybe like, you know what, I haven't read anything good in a while, or like, yeah, I've read that book, but it was kind of crappy. Like I need to like I need a better book. I need a new author to get into. Don't you love it when you get into a new author for the first time?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this guy's written 30 books. I got to read everything. So like that, I love when that happens. And then the other thing is like, yeah, I've been really like antisocial this week. I got to call some people. That's actually been one of the blessings of launching a new product like Prolific is I get a chance to email like everyone I know and be like, hey, we haven't talked in forever, but like, how are you doing? Like, how's life going? And I get to have a conversation with people. And then like, I try not to be ridiculously self-promotional. I try to be like, oh, by the way, I launched this new thing. You should check it out. It's really cool. I'm trying to like balance the need to promote with the need to connect. But I think both of those are really important. And so when people are feeling that inertia, consumption and creation, like consuming things that are going to get you fired up and then surrounding yourself with that energy that does the same.
Got it. Also, when you are when you build your superpower, you for example, I know of another person, Mike Roderick. I do not know if you know him. This guy writes one essay every day, and he has been doing this for the past 10 years. He
Awesome.
sends out newsletters every day, including Saturdays and Sundays.
Unreal.
So I have been meeting such people who have these superpowers.
Yeah.
My point is, you are also somebody like that with being the sheer volume of content. But does this kind of building superpowers come at a cost of say not having a great social life? My point that I'm trying to make is, can you have a balanced life when you want to excel out of the world in something?
Yeah, it's really hard. I'm a recovering workaholic, so I struggled with that for a long time, and yeah, jeopardized family relationships, intimate relationships, friends, colleagues. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're addicted to work and addicted to the approval and the attention. It's really hard. It took me a long time to be able to unwind from that. So I do think it's possible. I do think that there is a balance between meeting the quota so you feel useful with the contribution that you're making, and then being able to step away and be like, yeah, I've been heads down for a while now. I got to go talk to somebody, or I need to, get out of my head for a minute and get back into my body and to connect with people. And, during COVID, that's a lot harder. I think we've struggled this year with people being quarantined. So we've kind of had to double down on the Zoom calls, and like we're doing here on StreamYard, like, good. I mean, it's not in person. I would love to be able to give you a hug. That'd be much more satisfying than us talking. But like, this is going to have to do. So these are the kind of things we got to do. We got to have like those regular calls. My family is all over the country now, and we do our Zoom calls whenever we can. And like, I screenshot our Zoom calls because I want to go back and remind myself like, oh yeah, like all the other stuff, it actually doesn't mean anything, because like these people, this is more important than anything. So we eventually, I hope we learn that. It certainly took me a long time to learn it, but it is possible to have that balance, and it's going to be harder for some than others.
Nice. Let's talk about your other superpower, which is your approachability, your likability, and I'm sure you had some element of latent likability, but you also worked on it. So how does one become likable, especially from somebody who is an expert on the subject like yours?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, the advantage to wearing a name tag is that it speeds up the process. And I've spent a lot of time sort of analyzing and researching why it works. And I'm not saying that before I wore a name tag, I was not likable. I think I was probably just as likable. But I think what a name tag did is doing something like this is just a little piece of personal information. This is vulnerable. This is exposing myself. I'm so numb to it at this point because it's been 20 years. But like, you ask the average person, like, they don't want to do this. They don't want to walk around with this and have strangers saying hi to you. So I think there's a certain element of risk to it. I think the likability, I'm sure there's plenty of great books on likability, and you can buy it and find the 7 bullshit ways on how you do it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But to me, like, take a risk, take a social risk and stick yourself out there and offer some disclosure and say, hey, here's who I am. And, you don't need to have a name tag to do this. There are a million ways that each of us can take something about our personality and share it. And there's going to be rejection. There's going to be people that won't like it. So you have to be able to like steel yourself against the fact that it's not personal. They don't like you, and that's okay. But with that amount of practice and with like sticking yourself out there just in little moments as often as you can, it does work, and the right people will find you.
You mentioned if you don't like yourself first, no one else will.
Yeah.
How can one like oneself?
Yeah. I think a lot about this. I wrote a song about this a couple months ago that I'm getting ready to record. And I like this one. It's relevant, so I'll bring this up. So here's the idea. We have been told forever that if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else, right? Mm. Well, I have this theory that like the opposite is true, where we can't hate anybody else until we hate ourselves first.
Ah, nice one.
So when you see people doing these awful things or saying things in public or performing atrocities against other people in public, and it's like, wow, that was a really hateful thing that person just did to these group of people or to this individual. And like, you want to like arrest them or, hang them and just go, oh, this is terrible that you did that. But part of me is like, that person probably really hates themselves, and they probably don't like who they are as a person. And it doesn't make what they did okay. But like, I think there's a compassion there that when we see people doing bad things, have just that little sense of compassion. Like, when I hate myself, I tend to be that way too. So perhaps one of the first things we can do to learn to love ourselves is just to look at some other people and to just notice when people don't love themselves and the things they do, and kind of turn that social mirror around. And I mean, that's a big help to me. Just kind of looking at someone else, go, wow, I probably do that too. Or like, I say dumb stuff just like that person said, like, and just have some forgiveness and compassion around that. That's got to be a good first step.
Got it. And you also said selling yourself to yourself. You should be selling yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So let's say you work in sales, right? You have a customer, you have a product, and then there's you. Okay, so what you have to do is before you even get there, first you got to sell yourself on you. Like, I have to sell myself before I get on the phone. Like, I'll use software as an example because that's what I'm currently selling. But like, before I start trying to sell prolific software to other people, I have to sell myself on myself. I have to like do all that motivational stuff where it's like, I believe in me and I believe I'm worthy of making something, right? Then I got to sell the product to myself. So then I got to say, all right, not only do I believe in me, I believe in this thing that I spent 20 years building, that this is really good and this is valuable. I believe that this works. I know that this works. That's like sale number 2. Then sale number 3, I know it's like a lot. It's exhausting. Sale number 3 is now if I'm talking to another person, I got to sell me to them, depending on what kind of sale it is. That this might not be as big of a deal if it's like a digital product, but to a certain extent, people buy people. So you have to sell yourself to them, and then the product. So they got to buy like the whole package. To me, that's like the 4 sales in the process. And I think that we've all been guilty of forgetting 1, 2, or 3 of those. And that's one of the reasons we don't get the sale.
Right. One of the striking things that I liked about your book was you have this daily ritual of setting a personal appointment with yourself.
Yeah.
I love the concept. Of course, I have my time as well where I do my daily rituals, but I never saw it as a personal appointment with myself. So I love the concept. Maybe you could shed some light on why did you start and how has it impacted your life?
Well, I started this when I graduated from college. This is 2002. When I moved to Portland, I got a job selling furniture. That was my second job. I got a job as a bartender, but I don't drink, so I'm a really terrible bartender. So I was fired very quickly. But I was better at selling furniture. So when I got this job at the furniture store, I thought, okay, I got to be there at 9:30 or whatever. So like, what can I do in the morning before I get there to like get myself ready and feel like energetic and excited? So, like I went to the local coffee shop at 8 o'clock or whatever and just spent some time. At the time, it was like journaling and reading. I think that's what I did at that time. That was my daily appointment with myself. But I've kept that up ever since. And it's evolved over the years. So it could involve journaling, reading, meditating. Sometimes exercise comes into play. It kind of depends on what I'm doing. But I think there's any number of rituals or faithful forces, one of the terms that I like to use, that we can do. And if you think of it as an appointment, you think of it as like, oh, if I don't do this, I'm letting somebody down. In this case, I'm letting myself down. Or maybe I'm letting other people down because like I'm not bringing quality energy later on that day. So the daily appointment is just a simple commitment that we make to ourselves and to have some self-care. I think it's helpful in the morning just because you're like starting the day, but not everybody's a morning person. I get that. I like doing it in the morning because it's just devoting that time. It's like tithing, right? It's like that percentage of what I'm going to do goes to me first. And then as a result, I can share with others.
But why is it important to have this time with yourself?
Well, I think that it's so easy to lose sight of our own needs. As a codependent and as a recovering workaholic, one of the hallmarks of these types of addictions is that we put other needs before ours. And not to be completely selfish, because there's a time when other people's needs have to trump yours. And I think that's important too. But like, we're the most important person in our own lives. We have to pay ourselves first and take care of that, because if I don't do that, I can't be there for other people. So I think of it as a gift to myself and as a gift to them, because like, I got to be ready for how I can be useful to others only after I take care of my own stuff.
Got it. Yeah, the relation that you have with yourself is more important than any other relations. I get that. Do you plan your future life? Say, do you set goals for, say, next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? How do you plan your life? Or
I did for a long time. I have my desk open, so I'm going to see if I can find this as I'm telling the story. So for a long time I did, and oh my God, I found this. This is like kind of embarrassing. Let's see what year this is from. So I used to write my list of goals at the beginning of every year, 100 goals, and you can kind of see it here falling apart. Apologies for the, right. So you can see it here. This is one of my old list of goals. I'm not going to hold it up there too long because you'll see all my private stuff, but this worked for a long time. It was great and allowed me to achieve a lot of wonderful things. And I'm so glad that I did those goals. And eventually I didn't need it anymore. I did it for many years. And like back to the mission statement from before, like my number one goal is fulfillment. That's my only goal. Everything else is just a strategy, right? So if I can focus on the one goal, all the other stuff I do, the goals, they're not really a goal. It's a strategy to help get to fulfillment. So I don't set goals anymore. And planning, that's a different thing. I'm not a planner by nature. I think that's kind of a personality thing. Whether you plan or the degree to which you plan, I think that's going to be inherent in people. So I don't really know what people can or can't do with that. I'm just not a planner. I've really never have been. And so far, I know it's so unsatisfying as an answer, but I'm not a planner.
Exactly. It's very unsatisfying as an answer.
I know.
Very, very counterintuitive of a man who has written 50 books. How could he possibly write these many books, and how could he possibly create so much stuff without having goals?
I mean, I did, for the record, I did have goals for a while, but it's been quite some time since I've had goals, and I just don't do it anymore. Like, if you haven't read Scott Adams' book, How to Fail at Almost Everything, highly recommended. He wrote a whole book on why goals don't work. So he explains it. Let the other Scott explain it better than I will. I'll just say that, like, I did enough stuff. I'm good with the goals. I'm just going to keep going.
No, but after you have had a change in attitude towards goals, have you been as prolific as before?
More. Isn't that it? It's so interesting. I think because part of the not setting goals, it's about letting go, and it's about surrendering. So I'll give you an example. Here, I haven't looked at this in years, so I don't know what's going to happen when I do this. Great. So, right. This was write 1,000 words a day. All right. So that was something that was on here. Like, I don't know how many words I write a day. Maybe I write 500, maybe I write 1,000. It actually doesn't matter, because that was assuming that like quantity is important. Like maybe not. Like
Mm.
I'm not necessarily like all about quality, but like 1,000 is just an arbitrary number. I just invented that. Like I don't need to write it. Why would I need to write 1,000 words? I don't have an editor like over my back, like, hey, Ginsberg, you can do your 1,000 word. I don't have to do that. So like letting go of that arbitrary number was an act of compassion to myself. And like, I probably write way more than that now. And I just think it's interesting, like the counterintuitive nature of that. Just if you let go of it, you're kind of free. And I think that lets some of the weight off of it, which allows you to express yourself even more.
Got it. So I think instead of goals, you have your processes maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you could shed some light, especially I usually try to learn this from people who are extremely productive. What are maybe some of your personal daily habits and daily rituals? You said you are an early riser.
Yeah.
What time do you wake up, and what are your daily rituals that you follow? Or does it change? Do you follow process? Do you believe in rituals, or you believe just about doing anything?
No, I'm a very ritualized, disciplined person. I only have one outfit. I basically have a uniform. I eat the same thing. I get up at the same time. Like there's people out there just rolling their eyes right now. And like, I totally understand it. Because some people love to, every day is different and they do all different kinds of same. And like, I get that. I love ritual. It works for me. It makes me feel safe, and it sort of outsources my thinking. That's a big part of it. So like my rituals, whether it's getting up really early, or doing morning pages, which is the Julia Cameron Artist Way exercise in the morning. Just sort of journaling for 3 pages, dumping that out. Yeah, I have all my rituals, and they're great. Another ritual I have is like, because I read so much, one of my morning rituals, I think of it as like a warm-up exercise, is transcribing all my notes. So whatever I read yesterday, the first thing I'll do after I finish journaling is go back and get all my notes, right? So what it allows me to do is kind of warm up my fingers and my brain, and it allows me to write in somebody else's voice. So like I just read Alex Trebek's memoir. Alex Trebek, rest in peace, one of the greatest of all time, the host of Jeopardy. He passed away recently and his memoir is out. So I read his book and it's so inspiring. So I was writing notes this morning about Alex Trebek, and that inspires me too. So that's another ritual. It's very different from journaling. But these are the kind of things that just allow me to have energy throughout the day, and they're very helpful.
In your book, you also mentioned that one of the things that you have followed over the years is writing daily affirmations, and that has had a profound impact in your life. Maybe you could help us know what does affirmation mean, and how has it helped you?
Yeah, and it's just a way of doing something in the first person in the written word to affirm positive things. So, I mean, some people physically write them. Some people say them out loud. I do it as a form of a meditation. It's a breathing exercise that I find really helpful. But whatever way that you do it, what I think it's just about having a good mindset, having a positive sense of energy about the day ahead of you. So I'll give you an example. As I mentioned before, I work for a startup. I have a paycheck. Paychecks are awesome. I work hard for it, and I'm glad that I have it. I'm grateful to have it. So when I get paid twice a month, every time the payment comes in, I get an email notification from Bank of America that says, "Oh, you were deposited, blah 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 blah." I always do an affirmation after that. So every time I get paid, and it's not just for my paycheck. If I'm performing music and someone gives me $1 in my guitar case, or if I get money in any way, I always say thanks, and I always appreciate the prosperity and the abundance. And I do all that stuff just as a way to stay present with it and to remind myself that these affirmations, like, I don't know if they affect the outcome. I don't know if saying that allows me to make more money, but I just feel better. And it affects experience and not outcome. And I'm okay with that. I'm not a big outcome guy. I'm like an experience process guy.
Got it. Do you? How many hours do you sleep? I'm very curious.
I sleep a lot. I go to bed at like 8 p.m. and get up at 5. So I get 8 or 9 hours of sleep. I sleep a lot. I love sleeping. It is the best. I can't wait to go to bed tonight and every night afterwards. So I get a lot of sleep.
Got it. So my last question is, what would you do differently if you had a chance to relive your life?
Well, I think that most of my failures were some sort of failure of connection. So I would have gone back and I would have been less antisocial, and I would have reached out when I was in pain more to other people. And instead of isolating, or instead of staying here, I would have gone out. When I started playing music publicly here in New York, I perform in the park every week. I realized that performing music every week for total strangers is so gratifying for so many ways, for so many reasons, but mostly it's the connection. You get to smile to someone when you're sharing art with them, and there's this really beautiful connection that I never had when I was playing music in my room all the time. Like, it's important to be alone in your room with your art, because from a focus standpoint. But getting out in public and connecting with people, that added a layer to the musical part of my life that wasn't there before. So to me, that's representative of any failure that I had that I would regret, which is, failures of connection. Should have reached out for others before I thought about just staying here.
Got it. Maybe if others want to know more about Prolific, where can they get information about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is getprolific.io, and you can go to Get Prolific. It's the world's first personal creativity management software, and it has a freemium version. So you have kind of like the New York Times. You have 5 tools a month that you can use for free. And then when that time comes up, you can join and become one of our founding members. It's pretty exciting. I only have 100 founding member slots, and 50 of them are already gone. So we already got our first cohort. And for the other 50 people that want to join, I'm pretty pumped to have this initial community for the founding members, because they're going to help build it, and we're going to make it better, and we're going to grow it. So that way, in a couple of years, I can sell it to Adobe for $500 million.
Nice. How do you spell that? Get Prolific. I'll just beam it on the screen.
Sure. GET, get, PROLIFIC, getprolific.io.
.io. Okay.
.io.
I'm beaming it on the screen. Just let me know if
You
this
got
is
it.
excellent.
Hey, I got a point. Wait. There we go. That's it's reversed. So, okay.
Any books that you're thinking in the future that you want to write next?
Yeah, well, this is not going to surprise you, but I have my next 5 books ready to go.
Wow.
They're done. I know. This is what happens. You too could be this prolific if you use my software. So yeah, I got a bunch of books coming out. Not this year. I already put some stuff out this year, so I'm focusing on the software. But I'll have some new books next year. I hit the 20-year anniversary of wearing a name tag just recently. So I have a new name tag book coming out, just very specific about lessons learned from name tags. I'll have some other books, more business focused, probably some sort of interpersonal communication, because we talk a lot about approachability today. I'll have some of that stuff too. So don't you worry, more books are on the way next year.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a fascinating interview with with Scott Ginsberg. As I said, Scott has been a big influence in my life, and this has been such an honor to just have him and talk to him. Scott, I cannot thank you enough for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.